Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are and what time you're watching this video. No long fancy intro, but please consider subscribing if you found this entertaining or helpful. It's free and it helps me a lot, so let's get into the video. Since Tier 2 dungeons just came out, a lot of people have been struggling to go through them, and that makes it quite frustrating when you're trying to go in and random queue these Tier 2 dungeons so you can get the tokens that come from the little chests, and you can use that to get your Shadow Harvester pants and sell them off while they're still high, or to get some sort of loot that you need yourself for your build. And similar to you, if you're probably watching this video, I've been really frustrated with the random groups that I've been getting to a point where I basically decided to stop doing it for a little bit until people could learn how to queue block, because it was getting so frustrating spending an hour to 2 hours trying to get through Carmine Rage Island. So I wanted to make this video and kind of go over some things that I think you can be doing from like a quality of life perspective that will make queuing these tier 2 dungeons with randoms a little bit easier, especially if you're somebody who, like I was a couple days ago, I didn't have anybody else to queue these dungeons with. My friends have quit the game and I was in between guilds, and it sort of made it a really, really miserable experience. So hopefully for any of you out there in a similar situation, or your guild mates are not online, or whatever the case is, this could help you a little bit. So while it's obviously really important to be random queuing, you may end up finding that when you random queue into something like Carmine Rage Island, people still aren't very great at the mechanic. And because of that, you end up spending way too long there. What I would recommend you try and do, at least until December 5th, is you can cheese the random queue mechanic. You can decline until you end up getting the dungeon you want, and I would recommend you do that until you get Valley of Slaughter. And the reason for that is, of the 4 and eventually 5th new dungeons, Valley of Slaughter is by far the easiest. So if you find that randoms that you're getting matched with are struggling, you can probably try and cheese your way into the easiest dungeon, and that should hopefully help alleviate a lot of the stress. Another thing you can do is you can post up in Party Finder chat before you start looking for randoms in random queue and see if you can get into a little group beforehand. You can have up to 4 people in the random dungeon before you queue in. And something I would also recommend is you probably, 1, unhide your weapon if you have fully traded weapons so people can see that you have an idea of what you're doing, and 2, maybe even post up your gear score. Nowadays, looking at people's weapons and their gear score, even though you can't verify it, is sort of a way that people can vet who is experienced and who is not. And you can get up to 4 people before you random queue for the random reward. So I think it would be worth it to at least try. This is kind of difficult because you really never know who you're going to get. It's almost just as random as the random queue, but I at least feel that people who are willing to go into a party beforehand are a little bit more confident and a little bit more experienced than the people that you completely get at random from the random queue. Now, I'm not going to go into like the specifics of every dungeon and do like a full dungeon guide, because there's plenty and plenty of those on YouTube, but I did want to go through the dungeons and at least provide a little tip or two on some of the things I see people struggle with often. So the first boss of Carmine Island has this mechanic where you need to match your corresponding color and shape to a corresponding color and shape on a pillar, and you have like a certain amount of time to memorize it. And I find a lot of people struggle with this mechanic to the point where some people just don't even attempt it at all. So something that I do that makes it really easy is I stand in this spot where I can see 4 different pillars. And when the shapes and colors appear in my head, I look at them from left to right and I start saying them out loud, and I repeat it over and over. And when I get my corresponding color, I just do the order one more time to find where I'm supposed to go. Okay, so what I've been doing is like look like this, and then I should be able to see one here. And hopefully, yeah, so purple, red, blue, turquoise. Purple, red, blue, turquoise. Purple, red. And if for some reason it doesn't happen to be one of those 4, you have a 50-50 chance of it being one of the two that you didn't scan at the beginning. On the second bomb boss, I find a lot of people struggle with this, and just a little tip I wanted to put out there is when those bombs explode, you can actually Q block to take less damage. I didn't know this until somebody randomly just said it in a party that I was in one time, and I feel like nobody knows it, so I just wanted to point that out there. When it explodes, you can just Q block it and take a significant less amount of damage, and then all you need to do is hit the other bombs off the edge and just follow that through until you get through all the platforms. In Isle of Terror, I find a lot of people struggle with when he says, "I'll fry you," and he drops the fire X things, and you need to morph and run away from them and then use that fire to clear the fog. I find a lot of people morph, they run away from it, then they run back into it to grab the fire and then start clearing fog, which is fine. However, what ends up happening is a lot of people then run out of stamina, and then when he does this fury attack, they don't have stamina to block it, and they die. It happened to me a lot in the beginning, so what I've ended up doing is I morph and run when he says, "I'll fry you," and he drops the fire. Then I unmorph, grab the fire, and run around my geyser. Now, obviously, you can't cover as much ground because you're not morphed. However, you still should be able to cover enough ground to clear your geyser as well as the surrounding area. I've never had an issue doing it this way. And to be honest, even if you don't clear as much ground, you do get 2 attempts, so you should still be able to clear it anyway. And to be honest, in terms of void waste, I actually don't really feel like people struggle with this at all. The only thing that I see people maybe struggle with is the red orb mechanic, and all you need to be doing is run all the way to the back tentacle or run to the tentacle that's either to your right or left, drop the orb and run back. To be honest, I don't even really see that struggle that much anymore. People have started to grasp the concept of that, but I guess I wanted to include it just in case. Get out of there. And in terms of Valley of Slaughter, there is nothing people struggle with. Just make sure you hit the same sheep as the other people and grab the shield. But the dungeon's so easy that you can literally just default to it and be able to get through it fine with no issues. And lastly, I would say you really, really should try and find a guild. Being in a guild provides you so many benefits that are outside the scope of this video, but it really is an important part of the game to be in a guild. I tried to make this video from the perspective of somebody who is solo queuing and maybe even in a guild and still solo queuing because the guild isn't active. I was in that situation for the first week of these dungeons. I would recommend, if you are playing and the guild is inactive, everything else being equal, you should try and find a more active guild. Guilds are such a big part of this game. I cannot recommend getting into one enough, and if you're not in one now, definitely try to find one, even if it's not a top guild, just somewhere you can be where there's other people who are also working towards a similar objective, because it really does make a big difference. And that's it. I just wanted to make a couple tips to put out there for those of you who might be struggling with trying to get into random dungeons. It's been really frustrating when you go into one and you have to spend an hour plus in the dungeon trying to teach people, and then you get rewarded with a blue piece of gear. But hopefully doing some of these things will try and alleviate that stress a little bit. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a good rest of your night. Take care, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!